And welcome back to the program. And we're still sitting here with Dega. So, okay, so now we're at the day of.
Yeah.
Take us from there.
So the day of, well, as far as leaving our accommodations up in Squamish, which was about an hour and a half to get to, throughout the whole process, there was 9 charter buses out going back and forth, back and forth. So there was a lot of hype around just these mysterious buses coming in and out of Squamish into BC Place. Once arriving to BC Place, by the time we arrived, we already had spectators making their way in, and athletes coming in. So once we actually entered BC Place and started to get ready and whatnot, the athletes start walking in, and just off the bat too, they kept telling all the performers that stay inside, stay in one area because there's going to be a lot of traffic throughout the whole process.
Right.
And of course, a lot of people, took that opportunity to run outside and actually go talk to a couple of the athletes. I know personally, I took a bunch of pictures with almost every group of athletes coming from each country,
Oh,
once in a
wow.
lifetime opportunity.
Well,
Yeah.
of course.
So I mean, they were a little more lenient and understood, that this window was being open. And once we actually were ready to go, and we came out from different locations, or they called them VOMs, VOM 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
And once we were there, that's exactly when it hit. The energy build up. I know a lot of people were emotionally in tears, and just it really got to them. The spirit of the Olympics got to them.
See, that's the whole thing I wanted to ask you. Like, all of a sudden they're saying, the Eastern nations, and then you're out there.
Mhm.
Did you go into like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go out and dance, or are you gonna be like, I'm just gonna dance, but look at all these people.
It was, yeah, it pretty much went to, performance, just like, powwow dancing, smoke
Right.
dancing, or any kind of performance for that matter.
Right.
You block out. You
Right.
you get into a mental state where you're focused on you and performing the best that you can. And having prior knowledge that we were going to be on the stage in the opening ceremony as the athletes walked by, it was approximately an hour of dancing. And I know a couple of the individuals in the performance had mentioned that we might have potentially broken a world record for the longest dance or performance while an opening ceremony was actually going on.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really interesting. I know personally, we found out that we actually did make a Guinness World Record for the first indigenous or Aboriginal people to perform at the opening ceremony while the athletes were walking in. So I mean, just as we were dancing, I mean, looking around, you seen everybody. I don't know if you've noticed, but everyone had these drums that had ponchos in it that you were to wear, and different lights so that you could be a part of. They called them audience participation kits. And seeing people practice during the practice, 60,000 compared to the whole stadium filled with everyone wearing these white ponchos, it really set the mood. All the lighting effects really showed when everyone wore the outfit. So it was just, it blew me away.
Right.
Personally. I mean, I've never seen. I performed in an audience of about 1 million, but just 60,000 plus in that stadium, knowing that another 3 billion are watching, 3.4 billion.
Yeah,
are watching.
it was huge.
One question I definitely want to ask you. I mean, as a performer, I mean, you certainly just look at the performance. With all the controversy that started at the beginning of the Olympics to where it ended, the Olympics being over, what was your personal feelings about all the protests that were taking place? You as a performer, you as a First Nations, how did you take that in? Did you internalize that? Did you rationalize what you were doing?
Well, personally, I mean, as far as I had prior knowledge to, I guess the protesting that was going on, as far as, the Vancouver Organizing Committee building on Indigenous land, and going through the 4 host First Nations. We actually spoke with them. The first few days of our arrival, we actually sat down with the 4 host First Nations and the chiefs, and but they welcome both Inuit, Métis, and the First Peoples of Canada. So I represented First Peoples, And I actually sat next to one of the chiefs and asked her about how her feelings were. And it kind of related the same way I was feeling, and kind of, justified that no matter what, there's always going to be a negative side to it. I respected the fact that they were building on indigenous land, that, certain treaties and certain, agreements were still in the process of being, certified and, fixed, and that they just went ahead and did it anyway. But even during a speech with the Governor General of Canada, Michael Jean, that came up again, saying, that there's going to be a negative regardless of the fact. And I mean, I wasn't there to support the fact that Vanok was, taking the land and building on it. But at the same time, they signed an agreement with the Four Host First Nations, knowing that, it's going through. I mean, the only way, we found out the only way that Vancouver actually received the bid was from 2 extra votes. Those 2 votes came from their partners, the Four Host First Nations.
Wow, that's interesting.
Last thing I have to ask you, what's next? Because, I mean, you were at the Olympics. You were I mean, has it hit you?
Yeah, I mean, we continue talking about, every time a door opens and you go through and that closes, there's always a bigger, better, door coming.
Yeah.
And for me personally, this is a big step. And I think the next big project I'm going to be working on is, if you're familiar with the Indigenous Youth Games, well, the night before, we actually had a conference with, like I had mentioned before, the N1 division from Nike, and one of the individuals sitting at my table was the president of the World Indigenous Games.
Wow.
So she actually introduced to the Four Host First Nations and all Indigenous youth representing Canada that in 2012, held in Winnipeg, is going to be the first inaugural World Indigenous Games, involving, there's over 300, I believe, 300 million Indigenous people from across the world, and every Indigenous tribe or nation from around the world is going to be coming to Winnipeg to compete in both traditional games, contemporary games like you see at the Olympics, and cultural events. So I'm actually going to be working with the president and the board of directors for the Indigenous World Games as far as the cultural aspect of it. So
that's fantastic.
That's
really
my next
good.
step.
That's cool.
Some big stuff on the horizon for
Indeed,
you.
indeed.
Well, congratulations. You really did represent Kahnawake. It must have been an experience of a lifetime. Thank you for coming on and sharing with the community, and we're very proud of you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Well, once again, Nyawagoa, and thank you for watching another edition of Zawana Aorihwa.
Yeah, we'll see you again real soon, and we hope you enjoyed the program, and we'd like to thank everyone that worked on the production. And for those of you who are on spring break, are heading to spring break, have a safe and happy time, and we'll see you again real soon. Ona.